This case remains one of the most perplexing and controversial in Iowa law enforcement history. Initially perceived as a clear-cut self-defense scenario, the deeper investigators probed, the more convoluted the narrative became. A revolving door of potential suspects emerged, yet concrete evidence remained elusive. Years drifted by, casting a shadow of doubt over the entire incident, suggesting the foundation of the case might be built on deception. Today, we'll attempt to unravel the events that irrevocably altered Tracy Roberts' life. In 1998, the Roberts family relocated from Chicago to the tranquil town of Early, Iowa. Tracy, an American, and her Australian husband, Michael, appeared to be a respectable young family, seamlessly integrating into the local community. Both were embarking on their second marriage. Tracy had a son from a previous relationship, while Michael, a gifted computer expert, operated a thriving home-based IT enterprise. He was brimming with innovative ideas, eager to bring them to fruition. Tracy, vibrant and sociable, dedicated herself to homemaking, fitness, and maintaining an impeccable appearance. Their whirlwind online romance culminated in marriage a mere 18 days after their first in-person encounter. Subsequently, they welcomed a son and a daughter into their family, projecting an image of idyllic happiness. Michael's drive and ambition resonated with many, including Mona, a local realtor who had collaborated with him on several profitable ventures. Eager to maintain their professional relationship, Mona introduced her introverted 20-year-old son, Dustin, to Michael, hoping he could provide guidance and mentorship. Michael embraced the opportunity, introducing Dustin to the nuances of his business, including him in vacations and church activities, offering unwavering support. Michael cultivated a reputation for kindness, affability, and responsiveness, mirrored by Tracy's amiable and outgoing nature. With 3 children to raise, Tracy managed the household while Michael focused on his often demanding work, frequently traveling for business. No one could have foreseen the dramatic events that would soon unfold. The evening of December 13, 2001, began like any other in Early. Inside their home, 35-year-old Tracy prepared dinner while her children played. With the kitchen stove simmering, she ascended to the second floor to draw a bath for her 1-year-old daughter. Her 2 older sons, aged 3 and 11, watched television in the older boy's, Bert's, bedroom. Suddenly, their tranquility was shattered by Tracy's blood-curdling screams. Alarmed, 11-year-old Bert raced towards the source of the commotion. He witnessed his mother struggling to enter his room, only to be violently dragged back into the hallway by an unseen assailant. Clutching her infant daughter, Tracy managed to hand the child to Bert before being pulled back into the struggle. Slamming the door shut, Bert heard a cacophony of rustling and violent grappling, punctuated by his mother's gasps and muffled pleas for help. A brief silence descended, followed by the deafening report of a gunshot. In the aftermath, Tracy, miraculously surviving the attack, had fatally shot one intruder while the other escaped. Around 7 p.m., Bert contacted 911, reporting the home invasion and assault on his mother. Law enforcement recognized the urgency, swiftly dispatching units to the scene, the gravity of the situation and the well-being of Tracy and her children uncertain. Within minutes, first responders arrived at the residence, located over 30 kilometers away. Outside, they encountered the distraught children and a visibly shaken Tracy, who gestured towards the staircase, indicating the presence of an intruder upstairs. Adhering to protocol, paramedics prioritized attending to Tracy's injuries while awaiting clearance from law enforcement to enter the house. Upon securing the scene, officers ascended to the second floor, discovering the lifeless body of a young man lying in a pool of blood. The house was otherwise empty. Tracy, though conscious, struggled to breathe, prompting paramedics to transport her immediately to the nearest medical facility. While appearing to be a random act of violence, the incident was far more complex than it initially seemed, leaving the family bewildered and grappling with unanswered questions. The investigation commenced, shaking the peaceful community of Early, a town of 500 where such incidents were unheard of. Bert recounted witnessing the attack on his mother, describing how she was pulled away from his room by her hair. Initially stunned, he instinctively grabbed a baseball bat, ready to defend himself and his siblings. As the commotion subsided, he heard his mother's labored breathing. Moments later, two men pounded on the bedroom door. Terror seized him, and he unleashed a torrent of expletives, hoping to deter the intruders. A flurry of gunshots erupted, followed by his mother bursting through the door. Nearly striking her with the bat in his heightened state of fear, he was overwhelmed with relief that the ordeal was over. He immediately called 911. Meanwhile, Mona, a close family friend, raced to the Roberts residence upon learning of the incident, desperately searching for her son, Dustin, whose car was parked in the driveway. Upon arrival, the area was cordoned off, denying her access. Inquiring about her son's whereabouts, officers delivered the devastating news of his death. Dustin, mentored by Michael Roberts, lay dead upstairs, fatally shot by Tracy during the struggle. Stonewalled by authorities, Mona was denied the chance to see her son or receive a detailed account of the events, leaving her in a state of agonizing uncertainty. Meanwhile, 20 kilometers away, Tracy regained consciousness at the hospital, her breathing stabilized. Bearing visible strangulation marks on her neck, she recounted the night's harrowing events. She described hearing a noise downstairs while drawing a bath, assuming her husband had returned early from his trip. Upon investigation, she encountered two intruders who began ascending the stairs. Reaching Bert's room with her daughter, she handed the child to her son and attempted to retreat into the room, only to be seized by her hair and dragged back into the hallway. One assailant used her pantyhose to strangle her, causing her to lose consciousness. Upon regaining awareness, she heard Bert's cries from behind the door. Seizing the opportunity, she stumbled to the gun safe near the master bedroom. The intruders pursued her, but she miraculously managed to input the code and retrieve a firearm. Aiming at the assailants, she pulled the trigger, only to realize the safety was engaged. The momentary hesitation provided enough distraction for her to disengage the safety and fire. Startled by the gunshot, she continued firing until the room filled with smoke. Unable to see the intruders, she heard footsteps retreating. Hearing her children's frantic calls, she rushed to Bert's room, narrowly avoiding a blow from her son's bat as he defended himself. Relieved her children were unharmed, she returned to the master bedroom, where the smoke had cleared, to find Dustin, still alive, lying on the floor. As he attempted to rise, she ordered him to remain still, consumed by shock and desperation. Ignoring her commands, Dustin continued to move towards her. Fearing for her safety and that of her children, she fired several more shots, killing him. The second assailant vanished without a trace. Tracy recounted Dustin's earlier visit that day, noting his peculiar behavior and refusal to leave after learning of Michael's absence. She described the second intruder as a tall, dark-haired man in his 30s, but her recollection of his facial features remained vague. With Michael in Minneapolis on business, Dustin's motive for the attack, aided by an accomplice, remained baffling. The continued threat of the at-large second intruder amplified Tracy's terror. Haunted by the ordeal, she feared returning home and struggled to sleep, consumed by anxieties for her family's safety. However, despite her detailed description, the search for the second assailant yielded no results. Tracy's narrative captivated the nation, portraying her as a courageous mother who protected her family. Hand in hand with Michael, she calmly declared to the media, "I did what I had to do to protect my family," earning widespread applause and accolades. Her actions were lauded as justifiable homicide, drawing comparisons to a protective mama bear. However, law enforcement, trained to scrutinize every detail, began to dissect the events, harboring suspicions about the veracity of her account. The more they delved, the more inconsistencies emerged, challenging the image of the heroic mother. While many embraced Tracy's narrative, Mona grieved the loss of her son, struggling to reconcile the described events with the Dustin she knew. Haunted by nightmares of the attack, she shared her anguish with the media, expressing disbelief that Dustin, a kind and gentle soul, could commit such a violent act. He had no history of aggression or criminal behavior, making the alleged attack seem utterly out of character. She acknowledged Dustin's social difficulties, noting his struggles to connect with peers and the bullying he endured. Mona had tirelessly sought professional help for her son, navigating a maze of conflicting diagnoses. Could his social anxieties have escalated to such an extreme, culminating in a violent outburst? Tracy's admission of her long-standing fear of Dustin, a fear that transcended mere discomfort and extended even to his presence around her husband, further complicated the narrative. Her unwavering belief that Dustin posed a threat to her children shocked Mona, who perceived their relationship as positive and supportive. The police investigation revealed no apparent motive for Dustin's involvement in a violent home invasion, other than the possibility of a robbery. The Roberts' home contained numerous valuables, leading Tracy to speculate that the intruders sought to steal cash or Michael's collection of weapons. However, their actions contradicted this theory. They ignored readily available cash and jewelry, and made no attempt to remove Tracy's personal adornments when she was unconscious. Their focus seemed solely on violence, yet there was no evidence of attempted sexual assault. Was the attack driven by a personal vendetta, or was it a senseless act of aggression? Neither explanation resonated with those who knew Dustin. A potential motive emerged when Tracy revealed a recent assault. She described being sexually assaulted by her dentist while under anesthesia, waking up during the procedure. The dentist allegedly offered her $150,000 and promised to seek treatment for his sexual compulsions in exchange for her silence. Upon learning of the incident, Michael urged Tracy to report the assault. The home invasion occurred just 2 days before her scheduled court appearance against the dentist. Could he have been a second intruder, attempting to silence her? However, the dentist had a solid alibi, confirmed by his presence at work, and no discernible connection to Dustin. Tracy then recalled another potential suspect, bearing a stronger resemblance to the described accomplice, her first husband, John Pittman. They had met at Northwestern University in Chicago, where they both pursued medical careers. John, a fourth-year medical student interning at the Chicago Teaching Hospital, exuded a domineering personality. Tracy, accustomed to her overbearing father, initially perceived this as normal. Following their marriage, they relocated to Denver, where Tracy gave birth to their son. She tolerated John's controlling behavior, which extended to their intimate life, until she could no longer endure the physical abuse. Their separation in 1992 ignited a contentious custody battle over their 3-year-old son, Bert. Tracy alleged John had molested Bert, a claim that, while unsubstantiated, proved persuasive in court. With the custody dispute ongoing at the time of the home invasion, John emerged as a prime suspect, either as a direct participant or the mastermind behind a hired attack. Even young Bert entertained the possibility of his father's involvement. Law enforcement contacted their counterparts in Virginia, where John resided, only to discover he possessed a solid alibi, corroborated by his presence at the clinic during the incident. John vehemently denied any involvement, and his impeccable reputation as a successful plastic surgeon made the allegations seem implausible to those who knew him. Despite this, he remained under suspicion. Months passed with no significant breakthroughs in the case, fueling Tracy's anxiety. The continued threat of the second intruder loomed large. Investigators then shifted their focus to Tracy's current husband, Michael. A closer examination revealed a strained marriage, devoid of its former passion. Could Michael have orchestrated the attack to eliminate his wife? The theory gained traction, fueled by Bert's disturbing account of Michael's strict and often cruel disciplinary methods, which Tracy seemingly condoned. Perhaps, desensitized by her childhood experiences, she failed to recognize the severity of Michael's behavior. Michael's seemingly insincere reaction to his family's survival at the hospital further aroused suspicion. However, he too had a verifiable alibi, supported by CCTV footage, placing him on a business trip in another city. Despite failing a polygraph test, he maintained his innocence. While investigators believed his involvement was highly probable, they lacked concrete evidence. Michael's failure to disclose the polygraph results to Tracy, coupled with his apparent lack of empathy, fueled her growing paranoia. Upon learning about the failed test, she became convinced that both husbands were conspiring against her to gain custody of the children. She relayed her suspicions to the sheriff, citing Michael's sleep-talking about the alleged plot. Investigators delved further into Michael's finances, discovering his IT business was struggling and he was facing mounting debts. With substantial life insurance policies in place, the possibility of financial gain as a motive emerged. His close relationship with Dustin also raised questions about potential coercion. However, these remained speculations, unsupported by evidence. Tensions within the Roberts marriage continued to escalate. In 2004, 3 years after the attack, the Roberts marriage dissolved, initiated by Michael. Law enforcement remained unable to identify the second assailant. Tracy relocated to Omaha with her children, assuming a new identity and career in an attempt to escape the lingering fear of another attack. Mona also moved, seeking solace in a different city with her daughters. The tragedy had claimed not only Dustin's life, but also that of his father, who, consumed by grief and the stigma surrounding his son's perceived criminality, took his own life on Dustin's grave on Thanksgiving Day 2002. Devastated but resolute, Mona vowed to clear her son's name, relentlessly seeking answers about the events that led to his death. She refused to believe Dustin intended to harm the Roberts family, whom he held in high regard, finding solace and acceptance in their company. Mona considered filing a wrongful death lawsuit against Tracy, hoping to uncover the truth and hold her accountable. Her legal team, upon reviewing Tracy's various accounts of the incident, uncovered inconsistencies. Her recollections of when she recognized Dustin, the positions from which she fired the weapon, and other details shifted with each retelling. These discrepancies convinced Mona's lawyers that Tracy's story was fabricated. Mona also revealed Tracy had invited Dustin to her home the day before the incident under the pretense of needing assistance, suggesting a premeditated plan. Convinced Tracy was concealing something, Mona's pleas for a deeper investigation initially fell on deaf ears. 7 years passed before a new investigative team revisited the case, sharing Mona's suspicions about Tracy's role in the incident. The absence of forced entry and attempted theft raised questions about how the intruders gained access to the house. Dustin's 9 gunshot wounds, inflicted at close range, suggested overkill. The complete lack of evidence pertaining to the second intruder further fueled suspicions. The new investigators interviewed Tracy's first husband, John, who painted a drastically different picture of their relationship. He described Tracy as the aggressor, recounting an incident where she fired a gun into the ceiling during an argument, forcing him to call the police. Tracy had managed to deflect blame by claiming a suicide attempt. John portrayed Tracy as the unfaithful and volatile partner, accusing her of draining his bank accounts and engaging in numerous affairs, confirmed by a private investigator he had hired. Fearful for his son's well-being in such an unstable environment, John initiated the divorce, further enraging Tracy, who lacked any evidence to support her accusations of abuse. Fearing she would lose custody of Bert, John believed Tracy orchestrated the attack to frame him. The dentist Tracy accused of assault also presented a contrasting narrative, supported by video evidence from his office cameras. He claimed Tracy had been harassing him, leading him to install the cameras. Upon learning of the recordings, Tracy withdrew her lawsuit the day before the home invasion. Michael, too, denied Tracy's post-divorce accusations of abuse and harassment, describing her as volatile and unfaithful. He stated that he endured her behavior for the sake of their children, eventually divorcing her due to her instability. He maintained he was a strict but never physically abusive parent, accusing Tracy of turning the children against him. Following the divorce, Michael relocated to California, rebuilding his business. It appeared Tracy had systematically defamed the men in her life, casting herself as the victim while concealing her own volatile nature. Investigators became convinced her account of the December 13th, 2001 incident was a fabrication. They needed to locate and confront her directly. However, Tracy had not merely relocated and changed her identity. She regularly updated her contact information, making her difficult to trace. While searching for her, investigators interviewed Tracy's friends, hoping to gain insights into her motives. A crucial breakthrough came from a friend who had helped Tracy clean the house after the incident. She recounted Tracy's description of the shooting, which defied physical plausibility. The notion of a petite woman overpowering two men strained credulity, prompting a re-evaluation of the physical evidence. Among the items recovered was an outdated computer found in the back seat of Dustin's car. Tracy had presented it as evidence of a robbery, claiming it belonged to her husband. However, its presence remained perplexing, given the abundance of smaller, more valuable items in the house. A pink notebook discovered on the front seat contained Dustin's handwritten account of the planned attack, implicating John Pittman as the mastermind. However, the level of detail in the notebook suggested information Dustin could not have known beforehand. Despite being in his handwriting, it appeared as if he had written it under duress or dictation. Mona did not recognize the notebook, and its pink color seemed incongruous with Dustin's preferences. Furthermore, he had never kept a diary, and the notebook contained no other entries, suggesting it was purchased solely for the purpose of fabricating the incriminating note. The emerging theory pointed towards Tracy providing Dustin with a notebook, staging the crime scene. Investigators now believe Dustin was not an attacker, but a victim of Tracy's manipulation, exploiting his suggestible nature. Finally, Tracy was located in Nebraska, where she faced charges of identity theft. A search of her apartment revealed disturbing content on her computer, including graphic pornography, images of weapons, and photos of deceased individuals. 10 years after the murder, the truth began to unravel. On July 27, 2011, Tracy Roberts, once hailed as a hero, was arrested for murder. The testimony of her friend, combined with the realization that the notebook had been written at Tracy's behest, proved pivotal. The lack of forced entry, the nature of Tracy's superficial injuries, and the trajectory of Dustin's wounds all contradicted her narrative. The medical examiner confirmed that her injuries would not have caused loss of consciousness, further undermining her story. The defense maintained Tracy acted in self-defense, crafting a compelling narrative to sway the jury. They emphasized the circumstantial nature of the evidence and presented Bert's testimony as corroboration. Bert claimed to have heard male voices and witnessed his mother being pulled away from his room. He also testified to hearing the intruder threaten him through the closed door and seeing Dustin attempt to rise after being shot, mirroring Tracy's account. However, Tracy's initial statements indicated the bedroom door was closed at that time, making Bert's account implausible. The prosecution argued Tracy had coached her son's testimony. The prosecution posited that Tracy murdered Dustin to frame her husbands, secure sole custody of her children, and gain access to their finances. They depicted a calculated plan, forcing Dustin to write the incriminating note, shooting him, inflicting superficial wounds on herself, and planting the notebook and computer in his car. After lengthy deliberations, the jury found Tracy Roberts guilty of first-degree murder, sentencing her to life imprisonment without parole. Upon hearing the verdict, Tracy wept theatrically, a performance that failed to garner sympathy. Bert, steadfast in his belief in his mother's innocence, remained devastated. Years later, Michael, with the consent of Child Protective Services, relocated to Australia with his new wife and the children. Tracy continues to maintain her innocence, serving her sentence at the Iowa Correctional Institution for Women in Mitchellville. What are your thoughts on this case? Do you believe Tracy was a victim wrongfully convicted, or did she orchestrate the entire incident? Share your opinions in the comments. Please like and subscribe for more compelling stories. Also, check out these related videos. Thank you and goodbye.